job and stayed there. And we all know the next generation didn't do anything like that. So let me talk a little bit about my oldest daughter, Nancy, and her husband, Dave. David started to run 2 businesses very successfully. When he got through with that, he thought, oh, I think I want to teach. So I said, why did you leave that business? He said, I couldn't learn anything more from it. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. So he went back to school and got a master's and a certificate, or whatever you get to teach in Maine. And we all thought he would be teaching in elementary school because how great could it be to have a man in elementary school? Nobody wanted him. Let me say, he was too old. So he's now got a class of kids that are sort of somebody's figured out that they probably aren't going to make it through school. So they have David as their teacher. And by gum, David and the kids get along just as well as they can. And I think you had a graduating class of 30. So it's been a wonderful spot for him. Now, there are a few more years left. Heaven knows what he'll do next, but I'm very proud of him for what he's done. And Nancy started out in the theater, doing marketing and raising funds. She started out in Anchorage, Alaska, which was great fun because we could go visit her. And then she worked for the Endowment for the Arts and traveled all over the country. Now then she had a family, took a little time. And she is now what's called a partnership coordinator, developer.
Good enough.
Good enough. And now she's in one of the early schools that, oh dear, now I'm gonna get mixed up.
Expeditionary learning.
Expeditionary learning. Which means that the kids not only learn from the teacher in the book, but what they learn is tied in to the community. And Nancy is the one that makes the connection. So she knows all kinds of people in the community, and if I could remember one of her stories, tell me about the kites.
Oh my gosh.
How long that
Put me on the
that's not
spot. So the story of the kites was there was a woman who read about a project in Beijing where they put kites that had devices attached that lit up LED lights based on the particulates that they picked up in the air.
Kites with tails or kites with talons?
Tails. So the science teacher said to me, do you think we could do that? And I said, well, of course we can do that. We'll figure out a way to do it. So we found this wonderful man to teach the kids how to fly kites. And the kids did all the research on the particulates and gathered all the information. They presented their information up at the legislature up in Maine, working with the EPA, and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of work I do.
That, well, to me, very interesting.
You taught
My
them
na-
to fly a kite?
Watch out for that, again. Trouble. Andy's my son.
Here we go.
He worked for years, quite near here, in a place called Sycamore Lane Nursery, which is on the Warwick Cecilton Road, which was. And he finally quit that. He has now moved to a little island called Beckley, which is about as far south in the Caribbean as you can go, where he has a wonderful life, where he says to me, oh, Mom, it's 85 degrees today. Has a significant other down there, but fortunately he comes home once in a while to see good old Mom. And Jeannie, my youngest, got married late in life. She was almost 50, and she and Kevin found each other. Jeannie was a teacher in middle school science for years. And when they overburdened her with another course and a classroom much too big, she said, enough. So she now substitute teaches, but she spends a lot of time at the Maine Audubon Society, where she volunteered when she first moved to Maine. And she now teaches in the marshes and teaches the kids in elementary school and is having a wonderful time doing that. And she also, she works at the food bank and she teaches English to foreign people and so forth. And Kevin said I wasn't allowed to talk about him, so you can put your napkin over your head. Kevin and Jeannie have only been married 6 years. Nancy and David just had a 28th wedding anniversary, and Kevin and Jeannie just had their 6th.
Yeah. We didn't have it yet, did we?
Oh, you're about to.
Thanks for the reminder, it's in 5 days.
I expect all of this. It's all up here, it's just not always on the tip of my tongue. The 26th was their wedding anniversary. But I also should have said that Jeannie cooked professionally for the first 10 years after college. And it's always nice when Jeannie's around. Kevin says it's like going to a restaurant every night.
Wow.
And Kevin doesn't want to be talked about because he's shy. But when I first met him, he was the director of athletics at South Portland High School. And then he decided he would rather be back in the schoolroom with kids. He now teaches math in high school at Scarborough, which is a neighboring community of Portland. He's very good with his hands and rebuild an old car and things like that.
Biking.
You don't have to mention biking. Kevin rides mountain bikes. And he doesn't just ride them, he rides them vociferously.
Oh.
And he has just recently been in the national championship in Georgia, where he ended up on the podium, being the third person. The first 2 people were from Alabama and Georgia and rode mountain bikes all year long. Well, he's in Maine, so his chances are more limited. But he's one of the big additions to the family. Now, don't you two whisper over there, because you're next. Maddie, my older granddaughter, who's next to Barry, graduated from McGill 2 or 3 years ago with honors. In the course of after high school, she went first to Guatemala for a year, and she has since spent a semester in Brazil and a semester in Ecuador, and she taught in Ecuador after she graduated from McGill, where she met a man named Dan, and we thought, oh. Dan grew up in Boise, Idaho. So there they are, from Maine, meeting in Quito. And then we have Isra.
Wow.
Well, Isra just managed to graduate summa cum laude from Tufts, as you may have heard me say.
Yes.
Absolutely. And they're both wonderful kids. And they love me and I love them. I think that's my last speech.